right, Your Excellency, I'm glad to be with you on another live stream. You had a lot of questions that had come on as a result of the last live stream that you did with Father Disposito.
Yes.
And so we'll have to address some of those. But I did want to ask a couple questions from a previous video that people had asked, which would not be answered until a live stream in September. So I'm just going to ask those first, and that'll also give some people to join the live stream who are maybe a few minutes late. So the first, I'll give this as a real softball, Your Excellency. This is from Andrew McFarland, who donated $20. Thank you, Andrew. Your Excellency, what is the difference between a nihil obstat and an imprimatur? And do these apply to books not published by the Church?
A nihil obstat is given by the censor librorum, and that is the priest in the diocese who actually reads the books and gives his opinion to the bishop. The imprimatur comes from the bishop. And so it is simply to say that there is nothing in the book that is offensive to Catholic doctrine. It does not mean that everything in it is necessarily true. You could have some theological opinions, for example, that the bishop doesn't agree with, or most theologians don't agree with, but it is not contrary to faith. So, and that was instituted by St. Pius X against the modernists. But I've seen imprimaturs, especially in the late 50s, that I didn't think was deserving. But things started to unravel in the late 50s, you know. So I would say as a cutoff date, 1958 for books.
Absolute cutoff date, Your Excellency, I've often heard you'd say 1950. Before 1950 is, let's say, safest.
Yeah, I would say that's safest. There were trends. I mean, the Roman universities went modernist during the 50s. I mean, I know that from people who were in it, and so you know, Vatican II did not happen overnight. It gradually happened. Yes.
As soon as St. Pius X left us, unfortunately.
Yes,
came out.
But it got a lot of momentum after World War II.
The follow-up to that, is there a list of books with these declarations? I suppose he's basically asking, is there an obverse of the index where there's a list of books with the nihil obstat and imprimatur? I don't think so.
Not that I know of, and that was all up to the bishop of the diocese, you see. So it was not up to the Vatican. It was the bishop of the diocese. Nihil obstat in Latin means nothing is blocking. Imprimatur means let it be printed, you see. So most of the time it's a sign of safety, but I would say in the latter part of the 50s and early 60s, it's no longer that, you know. It's a diocesan thing, and it's just an indication. It's not infallible or anything like that. It's an indication that in the opinion actually of the censor librorum, there's nothing against faith in it.
And I think there's actually also one more level, Your Excellency, correct me if I'm wrong. The imprimi potest is if you are religious and you've gotten permission from your religious superior to even do this project.
Yes, that's in authors who are religious, meaning they belong to a religious order.
So it's governed by their rule about how they can write books.
Yes, that means it can be printed in Latin.
Modern Monarchist donated $20 during the emergency excommunication broadcast that Father Disposito hosted. Is this not the opening barrage on the Novus Ordo? And he said that the horrible council should be crushed.
Well, I've said over and over again that Vatican II must be annulled. It is a council that taught heresy. It has all of the hallmarks of being false and of not having the assistance of the Holy Ghost. And it just has to go. And Archbishop Viganò called it a cancer. And what do you do with cancer? You cut it out, as you get rid of it. We have to do that. The Church cannot have that in its midst. It's got to go. So yes, I agree with that.
And the last one from previous super chats, Your Excellency, is from St. Anthony Padua, Radtrad, $9.99. Thank you for your donation. What is your position on the age of the earth or the age of man? Are the days of Genesis literal days?
We are obliged to take Genesis literally, historically. There is some a controversy as to the number of years because the Hebrew numbers were very subject to change in the sense that the copyists that they did it by letters and by different symbols, and sometimes copyists got them mixed up. So the Hebrew counting is approximately 4,000, but the Septuagint counting is 10,000. So again, a numbers problem because of copyists. So 10,000 years old. But I am not one of these people that thinks that the Earth is 100 billion years old.
I was going to say 4,000 or 10,000. That's not,
no.
17 billion or 6
Right,
trillion or
right.
whatever
So,
it's going to be.
No, I think the age of the Earth is very young. Yes.
But that is, and that's I would say a consensus. Saint Augustine held that. A number of the early fathers.
Yes, all of the early fathers. Saint Augustine did say though that that creation may have happened over a long period of time, and that the word yom in Hebrew, meaning day, could mean a period of time, just as you say, in my day this happened. You see, the same. He did say that, so that is not contrary to faith to say that that it wasn't done in 7 days as we know now. It's 7 24-hour periods now. You're not obliged to say that. As a matter of fact, if you didn't have the rising and the setting of the sun, how do you have a 24-hour day? So no, I am. No, we have to take Genesis literally and historically.
All right. So now we can get into some of the questions from the previous 2 episodes, and I had a chance to look in the comments. So one of the points that people have been asking, there's this phrase used by some of these recognize and resist people of uniting the clans. And the question is, do you think that Archbishop Vigano can unite the clans, can bring together these desperate bodies and pull them into something that would really make positive change?
No. The only thing that will unite Catholics is the Pope. All right, Catholics will only listen to the Pope, and then Father Kelly said to me years ago something very true, and that the sign of the Catholicity of the traditionalists is that they are divided, because the only person that they will listen to is the Pope, and if you don't have a Pope around, they're going to start to quarrel. And so the very disunity of the traditionalists is a sign of their devotion to the Pope. Only the Pope can unify Catholics. So no, I don't think Archbishop Vigan can do that. Already SSPX has taken a step back, but he is going to be a sign of contradiction, because you have to say, are his accusations against Vatican II and the new religion and Bergoglio, are they true or false? Is he justified in this or not? And that involves the entire traditional movement, the entire basis and foundation of the traditional movement. Is this a new religion or not? You see, so he's going to press that. His excommunication will press that question, which I think is very good.
Well, this is, and you've heard this lamented before. Some traditionalists will be sad that why don't we have unity? Why are there so many splits? Why is there so much controversy? And I think that ties into the comments that you just made, that this is inevitable, and people shouldn't be, I should say, so sad about it. This is just how the situation is playing out.
Yes, and I would say that if you are reacting to Vatican II, you are doing so because you have supernatural faith. And that is the unity among, you might say, traditionalists, is supernatural faith. But as far as the theological issues, whether this man is the Pope or not, or whether we should accept Vatican II in the light of tradition, all of those things that have been discussed over the years, you will never see unity on that.
So one of the other questions that people had been asking, there's 2 parts to this. So why are you calling him Archbishop Vigano? Do we even know that he's consecrated? And then the second part would be about the consecration. And I was sharing with you that Father Cicada, when I'd interviewed Father Michael Oswald when he was leaving the Novus Ordo some years ago, had instructed me. I said, well, how should I refer to him, Father? And he says, you can call him Father. That's how he's known. The idea that I would call him Michael or something like that. And so people are asking, Your Excellency, why are you calling him Archbishop Vigano instead of I don't know, something else?
Well, first of all, what Father Cicada said is true, that you, by politeness, you should call someone as he is commonly known. Even non-Catholic ministers or something like that, if they're commonly known as that, you can address them that way. It's not any kind of concession to anything theological. It's just if you call a Protestant minister pastor, he's not a pastor any more than your mailman is a pastor, but he is commonly known as that, and you don't want to offend. You see, so right away that's true. Secondly, I would say the thesis. You see, and that is that the legal appointments are all in place still. In other words, even despite the Novus Ordo, all of the legal appointments to bishoprics, etc., are still valid. You see, so he has been named this, and he has a legal appointment to it. So at least that would give him correct title to Archbishop, according to the thesis. You see, that doesn't say anything about jurisdiction. It doesn't say anything about validity of orders. It just says he has this title. You see, I'm not going to call him Mr. Viganò. I'm just not going to do
or
that.
Carlo. Or
no, that would be dreadful. No, he's commonly known as that, and in the thesis, it would even have it, what we call materially, that is by appointment. You see, apart from every other consideration.
I don't remember which article on the thesis website is there, and you can go to the thesis website and read. There's lots of helpful articles, but the idea of being appointed to an episcopacy, you don't have to be a bishop yet. You could be a.
That's correct.
But you still possess the power of the office, even potentially before that consecration.
Well, actually, the opposite is true. When you are named a bishop, you have power over the diocese, even as a priest. Immediately. The consecration comes for the purpose of having the fullness of the priesthood. We'll get into that later. But so this is so he doesn't have a diocese. He's a titular archbishop. Mm-hmm. See, and for me that's sufficient to call him archbishop.
In fact, I think you pointed out before that Vatican II has changed this, in which they tried to tie the mission of the episcopacy to that. Yes, we'll get into that a little later. Yes. So the second part of the question, the first part, why does His Excellency call him the Archbishop? It's the Novus Ordo designation. The second part is, does he even know whether he's an Archbishop? And this was something that came up for us some time ago when there was rumor circulating that Bishop Williamson had potentially consecrated Archbishop Viganò. And someone we know had reached out to Bishop Williamson at that time, and Bishop Williamson's response was, it's not for me to say, which we had interpreted as potentially some kind of admission.
Yes, a backdoor,
It is not for me to say. Let your yes be yes and your no be no.
Right.
And so I think the question is for people, and I would say I would ask this question myself as one of those people, Your Excellency, is you've said before, if you ask a priest, give me the evidence of your ordination certificate. Can I have some photos, some videos? Is it not reasonable to demand of Archbishop Viganò photo, video, some kind of testimony that, yes, I did seek this out, because he's under a different scrutiny now? The Novus Ordo are not going to push him on his orders. But if he is declaring himself as a sedevacantis, this is the first question I think sedevacantis faithful are going to ask.
Yeah, well, I don't know what his thoughts are on the validity of the 1968 consecration rite. See, and I can't dictate to him what he should think about that.
But we can give him a link for him to read the article potentially written by Father Cicada.
Until I would know that he has been, as far as I'm concerned, consecrated conditionally by a true Catholic bishop, I would not approach him for holy orders, or tell someone to approach him for holy orders. I am just looking at him as a prelate who has done an abjuration, you might say, of the Novus Ordo religion, Vatican II, and that he is in that position. That's the only way I'm looking at him. You see, I'm not asking him to do any ordinations.
Sure. But I'm thinking we've done interviews about discussing what happens if someone comes from the Novus Ordo and seeks, and we've actually had an example. There's a priest member of the Institute and Father Michael Desay, he didn't come over and you just ordained him. He showed up here and said, "Oh, I'm ready for orders." And so there are some unfortunate bishops who do this. People just show up and they put their hands on them for I was going to say for better or for worse, but it's always for worse. And in your particular case, Father Desay went through more years of formation before he was able to become a priest. So would you put that same burden on Archbishop Viganò? I'm not saying he needs to come to Reading, Your Excellency, but does he need to go through some kind of training?
I don't know, because I never met the man. I mean, he might know more than I do about Catholic theology, and well, it's possible. I mean,
but so many years in the Novus Ordo, Your Excellency, celebrating Chrism Masses.
Don't forget he was born, I think, in 1941. So he may have had a decent seminary career as far as, decent teachers, etc. So I don't know, and it's really not my problem,
Well, because he's not coming to apply here.
No, he's not. It's a very distant relationship that we have. I mean, I think they're jumping to conclusions here and wanting a total fix, and it's just we have to go step by step in this thing, and I'm just happy to see that we're at this point. You see, I think there should be a certain patience.
Well, you so often talked about a journey on a train. There's certain stops, and he's, I think, fairly early on in his journey.
I would say he's about middle.
Okay.
And he might think the rumors are very strong, and neither side concerning his reconsecration, his conditional consecration. Neither Bishop Williamson nor Archbishop Viganò has denied. And I think that if it had not been true, they would have denied. If somebody said to me, "Have you been redone?" or something, it's absolutely not. I would quash that rumor right away. So I think it's probable, but that's not good enough. We have to get it ideally from Bishop Williamson, and he's I think 84 years old now. And he needs to say one way or the other if he did it or not for posterity and to lift this confusion about it.
Now, it is said that he simply does the essential matter and form. He doesn't do a regular context of the Mass. Do you find that to be dubious?
No, it's not dubious. No, not at all. It's irregular, very irregular.
Sort of something you would do in a communist situation if you were in a prison or something.
Yes, but I mean, I could hardly see what we call extreme necessity to consecrate somebody. I mean, maybe, in a very, very... But the circumstances that we're in now would not justify that. He could have done it perhaps without the Mass. See, there's a whole rite that is inserted in the Mass. He could have possibly have done it that. I mean,
Can you chop out the rite and simply do the essential form?
With a good reason, you could. Well, essential form is just, that takes about 2 minutes. 16 words in the hands, you see.
Would that be dubious?
That's not dubious. No,
right.
That's the essence
These are some of the
sacrament.
These are some of the doubts that people are bringing up.
No. That would be perfectly valid. It's just that it's highly irregular unless you had extreme necessity. Like, for example, you can do that with penance and extramunction if somebody's dying. You can give them just the form, just the matter of form. So but I think in this case, see, one thing about an Episcopal consecration is that you need a lot of help to do it. You need all sorts of altar boys and priests, everybody around you, you see. So if you don't have that, you have a certain necessity to do it, in a toned down way. But I think he could have done it by just extracting the rite itself from the Mass, and that way. I think that he could have done. But I don't know. I mean, we're talking through our hats right now because we don't know.
But you would like to see some sort of declaration from either Archbishop Viganò or Bishop Williamson, at least to say this is true or not true, that these rumors are flying around.
We need a declaration from Bishop Williamson, and if he is listening to this, could you please, for the sake of posterity and peace, give us that declaration, yea or nay.
Someone had mentioned to me that Bishop Kelly had pretended not to be a bishop for 2 years. Before Bishop Mendez died,
he kept
right?
silent about it, yes.
I mean, this is not good behavior either, right, Your Excellency? You don't want to pretend that you're not something that you are.
I think that's highly irregular too, yes. But Bishop Mendez insisted that it be kept silent until keep it a secret until he died.
So, logistical question. Someone had asked if if there were to be some sort of convocation to depose Bergoglio, how many bishops would be needed to give legitimacy? Is a great number of them? Any number?
There's nothing in any rule book. One of the, it's all speculation, what you call an imperfect council. That is a council of bishops that is not convoked by the Pope. That's known as an imperfect council. Many authors say in a situation similar to this, you could elect the Pope that way. Others would say, no, cardinals only. See, so there's nothing in canon law, no law of the church foresaw the situation that we are in now, and therefore it would be probable, you might say, or there's no rule book. The next pope, true pope, should put down all the rules. What happens when a pope is a heretic and he starts teaching heresy? That's the first thing that needs to be said.
I imagine that'll be clarified here.
The first chapter 1.
Because I'm thinking back to the Avignon papacies and Clement and I think there were 27 cardinals at the time, and I think 5 of them went away, or 13, and it was broken down among the French delegations, etc. So we were talking about a much smaller group of collegial cardinals at that time than we are talking about now.
Yes, and don't forget that was a schism over election, not over doctrine. They were all persons that could have been good popes. No, this is a doctrinal thing, and therefore I think the circumstances are quite different. That this is a very grave emergency for the church to get rid of this cancer. Otherwise, you're going to kill off all of the souls of the Catholic Church, and we see how many have been killed off already. So it's just very hard to predict. I think that the common acceptance, however, of someone that was elected by even a small group of cardinals or bishops, a common acceptance of traditional Catholics would verify that election. And that's the general principle of law. If somebody is commonly accepted as the Pope, after that heals the election questions.
I'd mentioned to you before your pack of hyenas comment was very popular among the commenters. It seemed to be an apt description of the situation.
Very.
So thank you for your patience, those of you who are in the chat. Your Excellency, I think we've got 240-something people watching at the moment.
Okay.
So the first super chat is from Dreek6923, $20, thank you. Why do you think some traditional Catholics are taking an anti-Viganò approach, calling him a charlatan and disingenuous? Do you think there's any chance Viganò is disingenuous about his newfound sede position?
No. He is entirely genuine. There is no advantage for him in doing this. There's no ulterior advantage. He is going to be stoned to death, in a certain way by the Novus Ordo and by weak traditionalists, Novus Ordo conservatives. He's going to lose his reputation among everyone except fervent Catholics. And so, no, there's nothing in it for him. No, he's totally sincere. I have no doubt about that whatsoever.
I mean, where's the accompaniment, from the Vatican II, Vatican II authorities?
Father de Say was very, very clear about that in his sermon, and he has an excellent sermon on this whole thing. It's on the internet. It's on YouTube.
It's on this channel.
Yes. Go to it, listen to it. Also, Father Barnes's sermon was excellent. I don't think I could have given either of those. They were so good. Yes.
Well, you know where they went to seminary.
They had good teachers. No.
So part of that is understanding there's just a really interesting connection with Father de Say. He had Archbishop Viganò had come and made a visit, and he has been excommunicated. Father de Say has also been excommunicated, and that's the thing: is excommunication is reserved for those integrists, those who believe Catholic doctrine. Yes. People like James Martin and all these other people. You do what you want. Sure. Photo opportunities.
Sure.
But excommunication still exists, Your Excellency, just for those
or virtual. In other words, where you're taken out of your diocese, like Bishop Strickland, or some of these other
Father Altman.
Yeah, Father Altman, who have suffered for the reason that, to a greater or lesser extent, they are defending the Catholic faith. No, all of the anger and vitriol is directed toward anyone who would preserve pre-Vatican II Catholicism. That is anathema. And all of the hatred of heresy that the Catholic Church had in the past is now transferred to the hatred of the truth by these modernists.
Anthony Murphy, $20. Thank you, Anthony. Does His Excellency believe that Archbishop Viganò will cause SSPX resistance bishops and priests to reconsider sedevacantism and the thesis?
Well, whether SSPX would have an official change in their position, I highly doubt, because I think they are locked into the legacy of Archbishop Lefebvre. He was not a sedevacantist, therefore we will not be a sedevacantist. I think they are locked into that mentally. I think, though, that Viganò is going to give a lot of their following much to think about, because it is impossible for a traditionalist not to nod his head and say yes to all of the things that Archbishop Viganò has said. They're all true. They are absolutely true. And the conclusion is also true. How do you resist that? How do you say no to that? So I think it's going to give, over the long term, a lot of them something to think about. And you might see some defection from SSPX or some conversion from Novus Ordo conservatives. I see some of the people on YouTube saying, well, it's an invalid, I knew that would be coming, it's an invalid excommunication. Also, Vatican II is a pastoral council, so we don't have to pay attention to it.
All the old...
The old, please
Father
give it up.
say it was the microwave, right? You put it back in, reheat it, use it again another day.
And really they don't know what to say about it, because it is ringing so true that their ears are bleeding. It's ringing so true in their minds. They know it's true, but yet I think their following would be a little bit scandalized if they said, we agree with Archbishop Viganò.
We have 1999 from Kimberly Young. Kimberly, if you have a question, feel free to ask one. But thank you for your donation. Teodoro Boggio, $5. What should we do with damaged sacramentals and modernist or heretical books? Are Catholics allowed to have a hell section like the seminary has? Do you want to have a hell section?
I missed one of the words that said, what are we supposed to do with what?
Damaged sacramentals and modernist or heretical books.
If sacramentals are damaged to the point where they are no longer able to be used, they lose their blessing, you can just throw them out. But you should throw them out discreetly, like put them in a bag or something like that.
Or can you bury them in your garden?
You could bury them, but you're not obliged to. But if it's a sacramental that still is able to be used, if for any reason you have to discard it for any reason whatsoever, you should bury it.
Like a broken rosary or something.
Well, a broken rosary, if it doesn't lose its blessing if it can be easily repaired. But if it's in pieces, then it's not a blessed article anymore. You could just throw it out.
And what about having a hell section in your house?
No. The hell section, actually, in seminaries years ago, it was the books that were on the index. You had to get permission from the bishop of the diocese to read them, and they were under lock and key. So that was the law. And no, you have to be able to read those modernist theologians critically, and you need a very, very strong basis in Catholic theology before you could read them critically. In other words, to pick up Kung and realize that this is a lot of garbage, and you have to. But some of them are very subtle. Ratzinger is extremely subtle. And so no.
All right, I think that's a definitive answer, Teodoro. So the chat had started by asking, I know it's 7:30 in the morning, but is Archbishop Viganò going to be on the live stream? And so there's a sort of follow-up question is, has he been in contact with you? Would you accept contact with him? We've had variations of this question before, but some people may be coming to our channel who may have never heard you talk about this. But have you been in contact with Archbishop Viganò? Would you welcome contact with him? What would that look like?
I have not been in contact with him. I would welcome contact with him. I would love to talk to him. He has not reached out to me for that. I feel that it would be upon him to do that. I don't want to impose myself, but yes, I would like to speak to. It'd be very interesting to speak to him. But no, I don't have any contact.
I've actually asked you about this sometime. Can you add tap water to a holy water bottle with some holy water left at the bottom?
Yes, provided you do not add more than a half.
Okay.
You have to watch it. And then a few days later, you could do that again. So you could keep it going forever, actually, as long as you do, it has to be a moral disconnect between it. So if a few days later, after you've done something, a lot of chores and everything, you do it again, that's a moral disconnect.
Well, that's helpful to those who don't have easy access to holy water. A thank you from Santiago Fernandez, $100. Thank you, Santiago, for your donation. And if you have a question for His Excellency, please feel free to submit that. One of the people in the comments said there were lots of funny ones, but the comment was, there are more than 1 billion people who recognize Francis as Pope. Who do you think you are?
Well, 1 billion heretics recognizing Francis as Pope, as we used to say in New York growing up, that and 15 cents will get you on the subway. I mean, the question is, are Catholics recognizing him? And there is a division among those who are refusing Vatican II, or at least in some form or other. Some accept him, some don't. But that's really not a material for this reason, because it is not a question of his personal heresy. It is the fact that he is not the Pope and cannot be the Pope is dictated by the Church's doctrine of indefectibility. That Vatican II and the post-Vatican II popes and he have been imposing upon the Church a false religion, false doctrines, imposing, not merely speaking it, but imposing it. And that affects the indefectibility of the Church. That means if that were true, if he's a true Pope, that means the Holy Ghost does not assist the Church. That's a heresy. So in order to avoid that heresy, you must say that he is not the Pope. So it really doesn't matter. I mean, 1 billion people, I don't care if the whole earth said it. Do they have the faith? Do these people have the faith?
Right. You had said in the comments that Viganò's declaration was more important than the 4th of July, Your Excellency.
Oh, much more important.
And why is that?
Well, because the Church is something that lasts until the end of time. Nations do not last until the end of time. They come and they go. And so, what affects the Church, and this really affects the very life of the Church, is far more important than what affects historical movements of nations, etc. So that's why I said that. But it was the day after the 4th of July, so that was. But no, it's very, very historical with regard to the history of the Church, extremely so.
So the live stream that Father Disposito hosted with you had tens of thousands of views, and we have to imagine those tens of thousands of people were not sedevacantes. They're curious about Archbishop Vigan and they're trying to learn. And so a lot of the comments were driven by some of this Novus Ordo theological thinking. JP2 was seen to be assisting at an exorcism, therefore he is in heaven. That's why you should go to the Novus Ordo. Or JP2 was canonized. Are you saying he is not a saint? Who do we believe? We're just simple laymen. What are we supposed to do? So we're speaking to these people, Your Excellency, who don't normally see you, don't know our position, and they have these sorts of objections. What would you say to them?
Well, it all goes back to what I just said. In other words, the impossibility of these men being popes because of their imposition of heresy upon the Catholic Church. That is the fundamental argument. Everything else is extrinsic to that. Whether they're canonized or anything like it is extrinsic. Canonizations would mean nothing from a false pope. That and 15 cents would get you on the subway too. As a matter of fact, I think being canonized by a false pope, as I always say, is like getting a pie in the face. These people were probably holy people. It's just terrible to see them canonized by these creatures, these modernist creatures.
Padre Pio, for example.
Yes, I mean, he was most likely a saint. Various other people that were most likely saints, and then they get the pie in the face. you know, so, you know, the whole thing boils down to as Father Barnes said, but I think he got it from somebody else, is this Catholicism or not?
Right.
You know, that's the question, and everything else is dancing around that. If you ask any other question, it's always going to come back to that. Is the Novus Ordo, Vatican II, and the post-Vatican II magisterium, the Novus Ordo liturgy, Novus Ordo disciplines, all that put together, is that Roman Catholicism that has continuity with the past? That is the question you must ask. There's a yes or no answer to it. Everything else flows from that. All of your questions are answered by that.
Some people are asking what's next for Archbishop Viganò, Your Excellency. If, assuming he might watch this video, what would be a plan of action? A plan of action. That doesn't have to be the plan of action, but what would be a series of steps that he could take in order to move things forward?
Well, I think the key, I mean, is that he could influence bishops or ideally cardinals to come together and say that man is not the Pope and that Vatican II is what you said it is.
So you would say that would be one of his primary duties?
Yes, to influence. We're not going, we can't have 500 years of traditionalist groups. You know, it's got to be fixed. The authority has to be fixed. That is the main problem in the church. We have enough traditionalist groups. We're doing fine. In other words, we have our own bishops. We don't really need anything from him except that, which is capital. And I think he understands that.
He has connections that you don't have. He
Yes.
has relationships that you don't have,
Yes.
and he can
Yes.
try to move that forward.
Yes.
I guess a follow-up Teodoro had, what should we do with modernist sacramentals? I'm thinking of a rosary that has JP2 on one of the parts of it, potentially, something like that.
Well,
It probably hasn't gotten a real blessing.
he's a priest. JP2 is validly ordained and validly consecrated.
No, I mean like a rosary that has his image on it. I think that's what he means by
I
modern.
would discard that, or break it. You could break it up purposely and then throw it out.
Okay.
But I think that would be.
That would be the royal treatment you would give it.
No.
From Brow, Australian, $5, I think that is.
Mm-hmm.
Is smoking a sin? Did you know any clergy who smoked?
Father Cicada.
One of our favorites.
Yes, he smoked like a chimney when he was young, and I think that gave him his bladder cancer, from which he died prematurely. He was 68, I think, or something like that, and we still need him very badly. I regret every day that I always say he kind of had a nerve dying on us,
The nerve.
Yes, here we need him, and he's not around, and no, I don't see. I mean, some people ask me this, but I think that with modern research concerning the effects of smoking on your lungs and your body in general, your heart, everything, bladder, it all collects in your bladder. I don't see how you could justify it morally.
You're talking about like a regular cigarette smoking habit, Your Excellency,
Yes,
not
it's
like an
a
occasional
habit.
pipe or cigar
No,
on a first-class feast day or something like that.
No, a habit of it, something where your body cannot tolerate it.
Needs it.
Yes, or in other words, a buildup of all sorts of things.
I remember Bishop Dolan had told the story that Father Cicada had tried to give up smoking one Lent.
Yes.
And it was, I think, 3 days in, and Bishop Dolan came by and dropped a pack of cigarettes on his desk. He says, it's not supposed to be my penance. It's supposed to be your penance. But it's really become a big
Yes.
grouch
Yes.
during those 3 days.
Yes. But, I never smoked my whole life, but both of my parents did. My father smoked a great deal. And I always thought, why would you put in your lungs smoke when your lungs are made for air? I thought that as a kid.
Well, you're a singular type of child. I don't think it's fair to compare you to
Why would you fill up your
regular
lungs with
children.
that stuff?
Tobacco can be pleasurable for some people, just like alcohol can be pleasurable, I suppose.
I don't know. I hated it.
Well, watchers and listeners, you now have His Excellency's comment. He says it's not a sin, but he says
Habit would be a sin, I think.
it's a sort of dependency you're guarding
No,
against.
I think, in other words, it does serious damage over a long period of time. And that's against the fifth commandment.
So there's your answer. How will you know when a true pope arrives, Your Excellency? Apart from a burning ceremony outside St. Peter's of all the Vatican II
Yeah,
documents.
well, I mean, he would have to, of course, profess the Catholic faith. He would have to repudiate Vatican II. He would have to have all of the moral qualities and intellectual qualities of a true pope and the spiritual qualities. I think it would be quite obvious, that.
We'd have to restore all the orders of the hierarchy, so there would be a lot of episcopal
Well,
consecrations
that's what
happening.
he would. To recognize him as a true pope is one thing. What he would have to do is another question, and I could give him an instruction book if he wants. I know what I would do, but yes, there has to be a restoration of pre-Vatican II Catholicism, but that might take some time.
But you're saying it would be obvious? How will you know when a true pope arrives? It doesn't need to be a checklist of items?
I think there are certain essentials that he repudiates Vatican II, he repudiates the Vatican II so-called popes, and he wants to restore the church to pre-Vatican II. I think those are the essential qualities, and
And that can break down into specific tasks, probably.
it may not be perfect or exactly what we would order up, but those are the essential qualities.
One of the comments had said, bring back the traditional Latin Mass, or they use TLM, and then people will believe and have the utmost reverence. Is that enough, Your Excellency? We can just bring back the traditional Latin Mass?
No, the traditional Latin Mass is an accident of, and I'll explain that. It is a trapping, you might say. The ceremonies are a manifestation of the truth. You see, they only have value if they are manifesting truth. As I have said before, the vestments, the magnificence of Catholic churches, etc., all of those things are manifestations of the truth, and they have meaning only as that. So the traditional Latin Mass and all of its beautiful ceremonies has meaning only if it is manifesting truth. In the context of a Vatican II religion, it is not manifesting the truth. It is manifesting simply an attachment of certain people to pre-Vatican II forms. But they accept Vatican II, and they accept the Novus Ordo as legitimate, you see. And so it becomes costume.
Particularly, Your Excellency, because there's not validity in many of these masses.
You're right. I mean, but that's another question too. But in other words, even if we were to assume validity, it is costume. And it represents nothing. Even a costume in the Metropolitan Opera represents at least a fictional character that has something to do with reality in that sense. But this is just representing zero. I mean, there's no truth behind it. It's just ceremony. It's just incense and vestments.
Attachment to a ceremony, but without attachment to the doctrine that underlies the ceremony.
Yes. It's merely dress up and costume. So I think it's a sham, to put the traditional Latin Mass in the context of the Novus Ordo. Also, I think it is deceptive that you can be Catholic in the Novus Ordo. You can't be Catholic if you accept the Novus Ordo. These are two different religions battling, and you must take one or the other.
Someone in the chat had said it's good for the algorithm if people click on the like button, and thank you for that, Francis. That is something that is important to do. I'm hitting the like button myself. And that's what I'm doing as I'm monitoring the chat. Some people have given Father Disposito a hard time in the last live stream. Why are you looking at your phone, Father? And Father was looking at the chat. He didn't have a laptop with him, so he wasn't answering text messages.
Stephen was away.
I was away in a wonderful place, Your Excellency, so I wasn't able to be here, but I would have if I could have. In his J'accuse statement, Viganò referred to the bull Cum ex apostolatus. Does the thesis also rely on this act of the magisterium?
No, it doesn't. The thesis relies only on the question of defect of consent, which is his first argument, really. The Cum ex apostolatus is a penal law, and the 1917 Code of Canon Law did away with all of the existing penal laws. So it's something that no longer applies. So no, we don't use that. Also, it always labors under the problem of, yes, a heretical pope, according to Bellarmine, but not all theologians agree. Bellarmine and other Jesuit theologians say he falls automatically by public heresy from the authority, but he still needs to be deposed legally. You see, so
That's always lacking in that situation.
yes. So in other words, if you just say, well, he's a public heretic, therefore he's not the pope, without any distinction there, that's false. But I do think that he mentioned it because the thesis is very hard for people to understand. The idea of defect of consent, etc. It's very hard, and I think Kumek, he threw it in, I think. This is just what I think. He threw it in because it's easier for the average person to understand.
An alternative route or something?
Yes.
Okay.
But I agree with Bellarmine. I think if he is a public heretic, he falls from authority. The idea, the faith is so closely tied to Peter. You know, thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God. Blessed art thou, Peter. And you know, the giving the keys of the kingdom was bound to the faith. It is just impossible to think about a Roman pontiff who is a public heretic.
Well, if we're thinking about lay people, you're saying, like, for example, Joe Biden, the statements he makes, clearly we could say colloquially, oh, he's not a Catholic or he doesn't believe what a Catholic believes, but we would need some kind of juridical statement like an excommunication or some kind of statement from the church to confirm that.
Yes, because he when even a layperson by public heresy falls out of the church, in fact, see, in the eyes of God he does. But he doesn't fall out of the church juridically until he's removed from the church juridically, or until he says, I'm no longer a Catholic. See, like Luther or something. So that's the two ways to fall juridically from the church, from the organization of the church, you might say, is either by self-proclamation, I'm no longer a Catholic, or by removal by the Catholic Church, the authority of the Catholic Church. But before that, you can fall out of the church by apostasy, by heresy, by schism, as God sees it. You eliminate that interior connection to the mystical body of Christ by public heresy. Even by the sin of heresy, you do that.
Well, we have a question from Damien Arthur. Damien, it's very late in Australia. Thank you for joining us. He says, "Aloha, my lord. If Burgo ousts the TLM in toto, what do you think would happen to the Fraternity of St. Peter, given they are essentially known as the Latin massist organization within the counterfeit church?"
I think they would have a very bad day. I think the lights would have to be turned out. No, they would lose their whole reason for being. What they would do, I don't know. Now, Father Desai says that they all share the same ideas fundamentally as we do, but they don't say it. And he knows them. In other words, he's been. So, I don't know. I mean, we'll wait and see. I don't think Bergoglio is going to completely do away with the traditional Latin Mass. I don't think he is. But I think he might restrict it more. He might get rid of the indults. You see, where these diocesan priests have an indult Mass. He might get rid of those.
Thank you for your question, Damien. Feel free to send a super chat if you don't know how to do so. One of your lovely children can help you do that. We've got probably another 10 minutes left in the live stream, so if you'd like to get your questions in, feel free to do so soon. It would not be possible. Well, this is an assertion, I guess, Your Excellency, from Christoph Hagen. I think it would not be possible to abolish the new rite of Mass overnight. How should a true pope deal with that problem, please? Well, I suppose it would be possible to abolish the.
All he has to do is say and sign a document, the new Mass is suppressed, put his signature on it, and it's done. And it's got to go. It has to be
posted on social media.
The first thing that has to go are the documents of Vatican II that should be burned publicly. The second thing is that awful Mass. Just suppress it all. And various other things thereafter. You could get it done in about a week, but putting you might say, the church back together again. I think you would have to impose upon the clergy and even the lay people a profession of faith and an abjuration of modernism. very, very, especially for the clergy, extremely detailed. It might take hours to say it, where they condemn all the heretics and etc. I think that would have to be done. And then there's all of the invalid sacraments that you'd have to deal with, invalid annulments. It's a mess.
I mean, I as you say that, it's multiplying in my mind all of the...
It's like picking up after an atomic bomb.
The weddings that have to be regularized.
Yes.
What of everyone who was brought up and baptized under Vatican II? Are we even validly baptized and whatnot?
Well, the Vatican II rite of baptism in the book is valid. You see, so in principle it's valid, but the problem is that the priests are not trained properly in Vatican II, and so they are doing things that are odd. So you had two cases of saying, we baptize you, one in Phoenix, one in Detroit. That is invalid. So you have this idea in the Novus Ordo that you ad lib. So you see these Novus Ordo priests ad-libbing during the Mass and everything. That's actually encouraged. So, we don't know what they're doing. See, in the past, people would follow the book, and even Protestant ministers would follow their book, and even a Protestant could baptize validly if he followed his book. But one of the problems that the authors mentioned even before the council is that you don't know if the Protestant ministers are following their books. So you have to ask and find out what happened during the baptism.
Well, and since this is Berean Gen, His Excellency did an interview on this some time ago in which he talked about all of the concerns regarding the praxis of Novus Ordo baptisms. And since then, I've been on alert. So on social media, when I find something, I send it to you. And one that I sent you some months ago, it was a bishop, and these young men were coming up, and then he would just pour the water on their hair. And then it wasn't clear that he was even saying the words at the same time, or something like, I baptize you. It didn't...
Well, you wouldn't have... They have to be morally connected. So you could pour the water and then say the words. That would be moral connection. The problem was the hair.
Right.
Because all of the traditional authors before the council said that baptizing only on the hair is doubtful. So you have a doubtful baptism, which in the practical order is null. It has to be done again. So...
and this is a Novus Ordo bishop baptizing invalidly on social media.
They're all a wreck. They're a wreck. They don't know anything about even the very notion of validity, that idea of it has to be correct matter and form, etc. It's all for them just a right that it's like a graduation or something like that. It's some sort of there's no rules.
Your Excellency, I have a 3rd edition 1956 book, Particular Examine. What are your thoughts on this book?
Oh, that's a very good book.
1956 3rd edition would be okay?
Yes, it's Mecalone or something. I think that's the author. It has an odd name, but if it's the one I'm thinking of, it's fine. It's a very good book.
Artemis, super chat for $20. Thank you, Artemis. According to the 7 ecumenical councils and apostolic canons, Bergoglio would be deposed 1,000 times by now. As a Greek Orthodox, I support traditional Catholics and you in standing for truth. We are closer than heretic ecumenists. I don't know if His Excellency would agree with that assertion.
Well, I would say, obviously we consider the Greek Orthodox to be schismatics, but I would say that they have preserved apart from the naming of the Pope on the triptychs, the traditional liturgy of St. John Chrysostom. I think they believe in God, which the Novus Ordo doesn't. I don't think Bergoglio believes in God.
Well, there is no Catholic
they believe
God,
in the Trinity. I don't think that their religion has been infected by modernism. I would say that. And they have reverence. They have a sense of the supernatural. I think it would be a very easy move for the Greek Orthodox to come over to the true faith, not the Novus Ordo garbage, but the true faith. I think that would be a very easy path. The traditional Latin Mass has the same reverence, etc., that they do.
That path is difficult. You see, as that road, that path to papism, that is the big obstacle for the Orthodox to overcome.
Yes, well, Council of Chalcedon in the 451, I think it was, which had all Greek bishops except one. Saint Leo the Great sent a dogmatic epistle to them, and their comment was, Peter has spoken through Leo.
This is a beautiful saying.
Yes. Now, so their tradition before Photius came along and before Michael Cerularius came along is completely Roman. And it was the Roman pontiff that made the Archbishop of Constantinople a patriarch. Because there were only the 4 original patriarchs.
Constantinople's not an apostolic.
No, it wasn't. So, I mean, I think if they open their history books with an open mind, I think they would find out a few facts that might disturb them.
Is it a sin to attend the Novus Ordo Mass when you are fully aware of what it is? I have a family wedding I've been invited to, but I don't want to go to the Novus Ordo.
You can passively participate in a non-Catholic service for a serious reason, which would be to honor somebody, for example.
So a family wedding.
Family wedding. But you only passive participation, which means you are not worshiping there.
You're not participating in the preparation of the gifts?
No, you just sit there like you're watching a video.
Sit in the back, don't genuflect or kneel.
Right, just sit.
This is a rather specific question from Moores, $2. Thank you for the donation. What's the best English translation of Story of a Soul? Very specific question, Your Excellency.
Isn't that John the 23rd? No.
No, Story of a Soul, St. Teresa's.
Yes, okay. I don't know. I remember the one from the years ago in the 50s, but I really am not familiar enough with it, all the different editions.
So would you say it would just be safer, as we said, imprimatur before 1950?
Yes.
That translation.
I wouldn't trust anything after the council.
Because I think there's actually quite a few translations. She's had quite a few translations since she's been declared a doctor of the church by JP2. So you're saying go back to editions
just
before
go
1950.
Back. Just go to your shelves. If it's anything, after 1958, I just throw it in the garbage.
You rolled your eyes a bit when I referred to St. Therese being declared doctor of the church. Why is that not a traditional thing to do? Do we not are we misogynists in the Catholic Church? We don't want to declare women doctors of the church.
Well, it came in as a concession to feminists. St. Paul says that women should keep silent in church. So we're arguing with St. Paul here and not with me or anybody else. I mean, it's not the end of the world if that's all they did. That we would not have to worry. And certainly St. Teresa of Avila taught us many, many things. But for Doctor of the Church, you have to have quite a few volumes. You have to be somebody that is very, very learned. And
is it encapsulating a particular body of work, Your Excellency, like working on, I don't know, the Trinity or working on...
No, just that you have produced a great deal of literature, you see, not just, a book. You see, that's one
quality and quantity.
Yes, and the whole thing has to be read. And if you get doctor, it means that there is nothing in any of your works that is contrary to faith. See, but
it's I'm sure
that's true of both of those Saint Teresas. I'm sure it's true. It's just they don't qualify from the point of view of their learning and the amount of literature that they produced.
Well, they were busy in mystical prayer. They weren't.
Yes.
They didn't have a lot of time to do a lot of writing.
I think Saint Teresa would have turned it down, frankly.
All right. Well, we have one more minute. I suppose, Your Excellency, we can close with reflecting. It's been a very busy, we did that episode talking, and I thought, okay, that's fine. We've talked about Archbishop Vigan. We won't have to worry about it. And then you
took off,
and then I left for a personal visit, and then things developed. There was an excommunication, and so things I would say are moving very rapidly. What do you foresee for this summer, and what is going to be happening with Archbishop Viganò? One of the things people have said is he knows where all the bodies are buried, and that might be another pressure that's being put on him.
Yes, I'm sure he knows where all the skeletons in the closets are, etc.
Not just a skeleton, a graveyard.
Yeah, I know. I don't think he should bring any of that up, though, in my opinion. I think he should concentrate on the single thing. And what he has said, that Vatican II is a cancer. It is the source of all of the problems that we have. This man is not a true pope. I think he should hammer away at that, in my opinion.
And you're saying not because that's not important, but you think it's a distraction, like a Trump, COVID, any of these other things?
Yeah, it's yes. His various theories about what is happening in the world. I would agree with most of them, but I think he should concentrate only on the church. The world comes and goes. It's the sun rises, it sets. But the church is permanent, and we have enough to do to fix the church. And if the church is fixed, the world will also benefit.
Our final super chat from Etienne for €2. It just said, thank you for everything. Well, thank you for the chat, Etienne. Oh, and Damien Arthur for $14.99 Australian with a funny gift. Thank you, Damien, for that contribution. Either you figured it out or one of your children did, and so we're thankful. And I'd like to say this is our last live stream on Viganò for a while, Your Excellency, but I suspect that won't be the case. I suspect there may be more developments this summer. But we obviously offer our prayers for the Archbishop and primarily, and I think you mentioned in the last live stream potentially also donations if he needs it.
Yes, I don't know his financial state, but I mean, he's not getting any checks from the Vatican. I'm sure of that, and so probably he does need some financial help.
All right. Well, as always, Your Excellency, thank you for your time. If you're watching this video after the live stream, you can also send a super thanks. There's also a donate button below if you don't want to use YouTube to donate. There's all sorts of other ways of donating directly. Thank you, Your Excellency.
Thank you.